Some men think women move on easily, that once the relationship ends, or even if it never started, she forgets all about him and goes on like nothing ever happened. But the truth is, that's not how it works. There are certain things a man can do that leave a lasting impression, even years after he's out of her life. Not because he was rich, not because he looked like a model, but because of how he showed up. Welcome to the channel. Glad you're here. Around here, we keep things real, easy to follow, and worth your time. Whether you're dating, in a relationship, or just trying to understand women better, this one's going to be eye-opening. Now, this isn't about tricks or pickup lines. This is about presence. It's about behavior, character, and how a man carries himself. When a guy consistently shows up in a certain way, strong, grounded, clear, it's unforgettable. Not in a clingy or desperate way, in a way that makes her respect him, remember him, and often compare other men to him. And let's be honest, most guys are forgettable. They play games, they overpromise, they try to impress instead of being solid. But when a man does the opposite, when he locks into a few key behaviors, that's when everything changes. This video is going to break down 5 specific things that make a man stick in a woman's mind. And if you're doing these already, great. You'll start to see how powerful they are. If not, this is your chance to change the game completely. So whether you're single, dating, or even already with someone, knowing these 5 things can completely shift how women see you, respond to you, and remember you long after you're gone. Let's get into it. 1. He walks away like he means it. There's something unforgettable about a man who can walk away, calmly, clearly, and without turning it into a show. Most guys stick around too long. They hang on to something that's not working, hoping she'll change, waiting for her to see his value, or trying to fix things that clearly aren't fixable. That energy is heavy, and it pushes women away more than they realize. But when a man knows who he is, what he wants, and what he won't tolerate, walking away becomes a sign of strength, not weakness. It doesn't mean he stops caring. It means he respects himself enough not to settle. And that kind of move sticks with a woman. Picture this. She's been hot and cold. Some days she's all in, calling, texting, showing interest. Other days she pulls back, takes forever to respond, or seems emotionally unavailable. Most men would get anxious. They'd ask what's wrong, try harder to win her over, or make excuses for her behavior. But not this guy. He notices the shift, doesn't overreact, and doesn't chase. He gives it a bit of space. If nothing changes, he calmly lets her know he's not looking for confusion or games. And then, without begging, without drama, he leaves. He doesn't ghost. He's direct. And he's done. That kind of exit hits differently. Why? Because it's rare. He didn't lash out. He didn't make her the enemy. He simply showed that his time and energy are valuable. That's confidence most men don't have. And even if she doesn't show it right away, it leaves a mark. Maybe not in the moment, but later, when she meets other guys who tolerate mixed signals, who stick around too long, who can't walk unless they're pushed, she'll remember the one who didn't need to be convinced. Walking away isn't about power plays or manipulation. It's about knowing when enough is enough and being willing to leave with your self-respect intact. That kind of man, she doesn't forget him. 2. He makes her feel safe without smothering her. Women don't forget how a man made them feel. And one of the most powerful feelings a woman remembers is emotional safety. It's not just about physical protection or being the tough guy. Emotional safety is quieter, but way more impactful. It's the kind of thing that makes her feel like she can breathe when she's around you. Like she doesn't have to filter herself, hide parts of who she is, or walk on eggshells. But here's where a lot of men miss the mark. They think making her feel safe means hovering, constantly checking in, trying to solve all her problems, wanting to be involved in every detail of her life. That's not safety. That's pressure. It's good intentions coming off as control. Real safety starts with how a man carries himself. When he's calm, emotionally steady, and not easily thrown off, she feels that. When he listens without jumping to conclusions, giving advice she didn't ask for, or reacting out of insecurity, it sends a clear message. I can handle this. I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here. And listening, really listening, is a huge part of that. Not the kind of listening where he's just waiting for his turn to talk, but where he's fully present. When she feels like she's actually being heard, not judged or analyzed, she starts to relax. And that's something most women rarely get. It's not common, which is why it sticks with her when she finds it. The other piece of this is space. A man who makes her feel safe doesn't cling. He doesn't need constant reassurance. He gives her room to think, breathe, and be herself. That doesn't mean he pulls away. It just means he's not crowding her emotionally. He's secure in himself, and that creates an environment where she can be secure too. And here's the part that really separates him. He doesn't try to keep the peace by avoiding hard conversations. He says what needs to be said, but in a calm, respectful way. He can sit in uncomfortable moments without blowing up, shutting down, or changing the subject. That kind of emotional control is what builds long-term trust. He's not perfect. He doesn't have to be. But he's consistent. And that consistency creates a solid foundation. No games, no drama, just a steady presence that gives her the space to be real. That kind of safety, she might not talk about it out loud, but she remembers it, because most guys either smother her or ignore her. But the man who gives her both presence and peace, he's hard to forget. 3. He says what most men won't. A man who speaks his mind, not to shock, not to argue, but to tell the truth, is rare. And when a woman meets someone like that, it stays with her. Not because he said something wild or aggressive, but because he said something real, something honest, something most men avoid. Let's be clear. This isn't about being harsh or brutally honest just for the sake of it. It's not about picking fights or constantly challenging her. It's about being willing to say what you actually think, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it might not go over smoothly. Because what sticks with people is the courage behind the words, not just the words themselves. Most guys avoid that kind of honesty. They smooth things over. They say what they think she wants to hear. They hold back their true opinions because they don't want to mess things up. But here's what really happens. The connection ends up feeling surface level. Nothing deep, nothing memorable, just safe, boring, and forgettable. But the man who's willing to speak up, he's different. He'll say how he feels. He'll let her know when something doesn't sit right with him. He'll share his values, his boundaries, and even his doubts, not to create tension, but to create clarity. And that clarity earns respect. The real difference is that he's not trying to impress. He's not filtering everything he says to avoid conflict or keep things comfortable. He's rooted in who he is, and because of that, he can tell the truth without fear of being misunderstood or rejected. Even if the conversation is uncomfortable, she feels that it's coming from a solid place. There's also something attractive about a man who can be honest when it's vulnerable. Saying, "I don't know," or "That made me feel disrespected," or "This isn't working for me." That takes more strength than pretending to have it all figured out. And women don't forget a man who can be both confident and open. When you're that kind of honest, people trust you more. They might not always agree with you, but they know where you stand. That kind of clarity is rare and powerful. Most men play it safe and keep things shallow. But when a man is willing to go deeper, say what he means, and let the chips fall where they may, that leaves a mark. It might not always be smooth, but it's real. And real always gets remembered. 4. He never chases. He leads. A man who leads stands out because most don't. Most guys chase. They put in too much effort too early. They overthink every move, and they make the woman the center of their attention before anything real is even established. It doesn't come from confidence. It comes from a fear of missing out or not being enough. Chasing usually looks like constantly checking in, always initiating conversations, over-explaining your intentions, or trying to win her over through effort alone. And while it might seem like dedication, it can actually feel like pressure. It gives off the impression that your time, energy, and attention are only valuable if she responds a certain way. That's not leadership. That's reacting. Leading is different. A man who leads is clear about his interest, but he's not dependent on her response. He makes the first move, sure, but he also watches how she responds and adjusts based on mutual effort. He's not trying to prove himself. He's showing who he already is, and letting her choose if she wants to be part of that. When a man leads, he sets the pace. Not in a controlling way, but in a confident way. He decides what he's available for and what he's not. He moves things forward with intention, but never with pressure. He's fine with space, fine with time, and fine if things don't go his way, because he knows his value doesn't change based on someone else's interest. Leading also means having a life that doesn't stop just because someone new shows up. He has direction. He has purpose. He invites her into that world, instead of trying to build one around her. That balance of presence and independence is rare, and it sends a clear message without saying much at all. Women notice this because it feels different. There's no chasing, no neediness, no desperation to impress. Just a man moving forward on his own path. And when that kind of man shows interest, it hits differently. It feels solid, grounded, and it's much more attractive than someone who's willing to bend in every direction just to keep things going. At the core of it, leadership is about self-control. It's about knowing when to step forward and when to let things breathe. It's about trusting that if a connection is right, it won't require begging or convincing. And if it's not right, no amount of chasing will make it worth your time. That mindset is what sets a man apart. Because anyone can pursue, but the man who leads with calm, quiet confidence, that's the one she remembers. 5. He knows when to shut up. One of the most overlooked traits that makes a man unforgettable is his ability to be quiet at the right time. Not passive, not withdrawn, just intentional. He doesn't feel the need to fill every silence. He's not constantly talking to prove he knows something or trying to control the conversation. He understands that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. A lot of guys make the mistake of thinking silence is weakness. So they over-explain, defend themselves too much, or try to fix every problem by talking it to death. But here's the thing. Always needing to say something often does more harm than good. It can turn into pressure. It can come off as insecurity. And it usually makes a woman feel like she's not really being heard. She's just being talked at. Sometimes silence shows strength. It shows presence. It shows that you're not reacting emotionally to every little thing. And that calm, grounded energy is something women remember, especially in a world where most people are quick to argue or overshare. There's a moment that speaks to this perfectly. She's venting. She's clearly upset. She's not asking for a solution. She's just unloading. Most guys would interrupt with advice. They'd start throwing out ideas or telling her what she should do, thinking they're being helpful. But instead, he listens. He lets her talk. He stays with her, nods occasionally, doesn't rush her, doesn't fix. Just listens. Then when she pauses, he simply says, "I hear you." That's it. No lecture, no speech. Just calm presence. And it changes everything. She feels safe. Not because he had the perfect words, but because he didn't need to make it about him. He wasn't uncomfortable with her emotion. He wasn't trying to stop it. He let her be real, and that stuck with her. This same mindset also shows up during conflict. When things get tense, a lot of men either shut down completely or talk too much, trying to explain, defend, or take control of the situation. But the man who stays calm, thinks before speaking, and waits for the right moment to respond. That's a man who earns respect. His silence isn't passive. It's steady. Knowing when to speak is a skill. Knowing when not to speak is maturity. And the men who get this right stand out. Not because they say more, but because what they do say matters. When a man knows how to sit with silence without making it awkward, when he doesn't rush to fill the space with noise, and when he can just be there, she notices. And more importantly, she remembers. 6. He doesn't tolerate low standards. One of the clearest signs of a man who sticks in a woman's memory is how he handles his standards. Not just what he says he wants, but what he accepts. A lot of guys talk a good game. They say they want honesty, consistency, respect, and effort. But when it comes down to it, they end up tolerating the exact opposite, just to keep someone around. That's where the difference lies. The man who doesn't tolerate low standards doesn't say one thing and do another. He holds himself and the people in his life to a certain level of respect, and he doesn't lower that bar to avoid conflict or loneliness. This isn't about being harsh or inflexible. It's about having clarity. It's knowing the kind of behavior he's willing to allow in his space and being consistent about it. That means he doesn't stick around when someone is hot and cold, constantly testing his patience or putting in the bare minimum. He doesn't make excuses for bad communication or lack of effort. He pays attention to patterns, not just promises. And this applies to how he lives, not just how he dates. A man who holds high standards isn't only focused on how she acts. He watches his own habits too. He's intentional with how he speaks, how he treats people, how he spends his time, and what kind of energy he allows into his life. That consistency builds trust. It shows that his standards aren't just a set of rules, they're a reflection of his values. Women notice this because it creates a certain kind of energy. They know they can't just do whatever they want and expect him to stick around. Not because he's threatening to leave, but because he's clearly not someone who compromises his core values for temporary comfort. That quiet confidence leaves a stronger impression than any words ever could. The truth is, anyone can talk about boundaries. Anyone can post about self-respect. But living it, day in and day out, is what makes the difference. And that's what she remembers. Not just how he treated her when things were good, but how he handled himself when things got off track. Did he shrink? Did he chase? Or did he stay true to what he said he stood for? A man who doesn't tolerate low standards isn't hard to find because he's cold or guarded. He's hard to find because he's solid. He's not desperate for connection, and he's not moved by pressure. He chooses what aligns with him and lets go of what doesn't. That kind of self-respect sticks with a woman, because most people compromise too quickly. But the man who stays rooted in his standards, he's not easy to forget. 7. He leaves her better than he found her. The kind of man a woman remembers isn't just the one who made her laugh, made her feel desired, or impressed her in the short term. It's the one who left a positive impact, who challenged her to grow, who showed up with character, not just charm. A man who left her better than he found her, not because he was perfect, but because he moved with purpose and integrity. This doesn't mean you need to be her therapist, fix her problems, or try to change her. It means that in the time you spent with her, whether it was a relationship, a few months of dating, or even something short, you added value. She walked away from that experience knowing a little more about herself, about relationships, or even just about what she deserves. And here's the truth that some men need to hear. If you leave women confused, emotionally drained, or questioning their worth, that's not a win. It's not power. It's immaturity. Being unforgettable doesn't come from how good your game is. It comes from how you treat people when there's nothing in it for you. So ask yourself, are you building something when you're with someone? Or are you just taking what you can and moving on when it's no longer convenient? A man who leaves a woman better than he found her takes responsibility for how he shows up. He doesn't play with emotions. He's honest, even when it's uncomfortable. He sets clear boundaries and respects hers. He doesn't fake interest to get what he wants, then disappear when it's time to have real conversations. That kind of behavior is everywhere, and forgettable. What's rare is the man who's intentional, who knows what kind of energy he brings, who doesn't shy away from hard truths, but also doesn't make things harder than they need to be. He's real, he's kind, and he's solid. And even if things don't work out, she looks back and thinks, I learned something from that. I grew from that. That's a mark of a high-value man. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Most men aren't taught this stuff. But now's the time to wake up and reflect. Are you showing up as someone who adds value, or someone who just takes up space? Are you leading with honesty and respect, or with ego and fear? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. But you do need to take responsibility for how you move in relationships. That's how you grow. That's how you stand out. And that's how you become the kind of man a woman doesn't forget. Most men focus on being liked in the moment. But the men women remember aren't always the most charming or the most physically impressive. They're the ones who showed up with consistency, clarity, and character. Here's something to think about. It's not that women have high standards, it's that too many men are okay living below theirs. What you do, how you speak, the way you carry yourself, it all leaves a mark. And it's not about performing or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about being grounded in who you are and refusing to drop your standards just to keep someone interested. If you're doing some of these things already, keep going. You're on the right track. If not, don't overthink it. Just start paying attention. Show up with intention. Speak your truth. Lead with calm confidence. You'd be surprised how far that alone can take you. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of these hit home the most? Have you seen any of these play out in your own life, either by doing them or missing the mark? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them, I'll be responding, and I'm here to have real conversations, not just post and disappear. So let's talk. And if this gave you something to think about, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it too. You showing up better helps everyone around you.